We live our lives surrounded by these invisible systems. They're kind of the rules of the game, right? The ones written down, and maybe more importantly, the ones that aren't. And they quietly shape pretty much every choice we make. So today, we're going to make them visible.
So let me ask you something right off the bat. Have you ever really thought about the invisible rules that shape your life? I'm talking about the default settings that kind of guide your decisions every single day. Because honestly, getting a handle on those forces, that's the key to everything we're about to get into.
You see, we're all operating inside what you could call an invisible ecosystem, and it's this incredibly complex web of structures that influences us in ways we probably don't even notice most of the time.
Now, when I say ecosystem, I don't just mean the school system or something obvious like that. Nope. It's everything. It's the media we consume, it's the expectations our parents have for us, all those pressures from society. It's the entire environment that literally conditions how we think, and, maybe most importantly, what we believe is even possible for ourselves.
And what's so wild is how it all works. This whole ecosystem, it creates this, it's like a path of least resistance. It doesn't have to force you to do anything. It just gently nudges you down this road that's already been paved. It makes some choices feel totally normal, totally natural, while others, they feel risky, or weird, or maybe even completely impossible.
Okay, but what happens when that easy path becomes a dead end? Or worse, a trap? What happens when the system stops guiding people and starts failing them, failing the very people it's supposed to be there for?
Let's make this real. We can look at two totally different stories that are actually weirdly parallel. So on one side, you've got a student in India. The whole ecosystem there is pushing them into just a handful of acceptable careers. Sure, it feels like they have a choice, but do they really? And then on the other side, you've got a parent in the UK who's just battling this insane bureaucratic maze, all to get basic support for their child with special needs. See? They're both trapped, just in different kinds of systems, both just fighting for a path that actually works for them.
And this quote from Sophie Walker, a parent whose daughter has Asperger's, just nails this feeling of frustration. She called the system Kafkaesque, a world of smoke and mirrors, where the rules are impossible to figure out, and the default answer always seems to be no. It feels like a system that's almost designed to just wear you down.
And then if you look back at the student's side of the story, the numbers are, wow. They're just as stark. In India, think about it. A world of infinite possibilities, right? But the ecosystem is so powerful that a whopping 90% of students feel like they're being pushed into just 4 career paths. 4! So here's the real kicker. A system doesn't have to be malicious to be restrictive. It just has to lack options.
All right, so if these systems are so broken, what do we do? How do we actually fix them? Well, that question takes us right into the fight for new rules. Because here's the thing you absolutely have to remember. Rules are not set in stone. They're made by people, and that means they can be changed by people.
So, to really get how this happens, we're going to zoom in on a real-world example. We're going inside a Minnesota Senate Judiciary hearing. And look, this isn't some dramatic scene from a movie. This is the messy, painstaking, real process of changing a law, one single voice at a time.
So, this whole process, it started with a tragedy. A young woman named Allison was murdered, and her death exposed this absolutely fatal flaw in the law, a 72-hour time limit for police to arrest someone in a domestic abuse case. That led to a bill, Senate File 4031. But the most important part of this whole thing, the real turning point, is when the voices are finally heard. It's that moment when the abstract, dry language of the law slams right into the raw, painful reality of human loss.
And this right here, this is the voice of Allison's aunt, Jenna Williams, speaking directly to those lawmakers. And her testimony just completely transforms the entire hearing. All of a sudden, it's not about statutes and subsections anymore. It's about 32 minutes. It's about a clock that literally ran out on her niece's safety. And that is how one single, powerful story can force an entire system to look in the mirror and finally change.
Okay, so changing one rule, that's incredibly powerful, no doubt. But what does it take to build an entire system from scratch? What's the blueprint for that kind of massive, monumental change?
Well, believe it or not, the story starts in a kind of unlikely place, the London Library.
And it all centers around 2 statues that are in there.
So one of these statues is of Karl Marx. He wrote Das Kapital, he theorized a whole new system. But the other statue, that's Dr. B.R.M. Baedeker. And he didn't just theorize about a new system, he actually architected one for the world's largest democracy. I mean, Dr. Ambedkar's story is it's absolutely extraordinary. He was born into the Dalit caste, into a system that was specifically designed to deny him his most basic human rights. But he just refused to be defined by it. Instead, he armed himself with knowledge. Education became his weapon, and he rose to become the chief architect of the Indian Constitution, a document he literally engineered to dismantle the very system that was built to crush people like him.
You know, someone once asked him why he worked so tirelessly, even while everyone else was celebrating independence. And his answer was just so profound. He wasn't just working for himself. He saw himself as being awake, building a whole new set of rules for generations who weren't yet free, for all the people who were still asleep to what a different future could even look like.
So, we've looked at the ecosystem, we've seen the failures, we've even seen the blueprints for radical change, and that brings the question right back around. To us, what's our role in all of this?
Okay, so if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Systems can feel so permanent, so unchangeable, but they're not. They're just not. Whether it's a parent fighting for one single yes from a bureaucracy, or a lawmaker trying to close a deadly loophole, or an architect drafting a constitution for a billion people, every single system is a human creation. It was built by people, which means it can be rebuilt by people.
So, the final thought is this. Systems aren't just something that happens to us. We are a part of them. We're in them every day. So the only question left to ask is, which system will you challenge? Which one will you change? Or which one will you build?